Support me and be on my wall of supporters. Thank you, my nerd. I wanted to start this video off by presenting this totally original little guy, the Anbernic RG34XX SP, or how I better like to call it, the clone of the Miyoo Flip. Hey my dear nerds, Vlad Nerd here. We need to talk about clones. Clones of freaking clones. In fact, we have so many clones on top of clones that it's really hard to remember which one came first. It's really kind of ridiculous by this point. You see, tried. I tried to figure out a formula on how to present to you Anbernic's latest Flippy Boy. This fairly beautiful RG34XX SP. The problem is that this handheld doesn't live in a vacuum. It lives in the same Marvel universe as this guy, the almost identical looking Miyoo Flip. And I don't want to be too harsh on the Anbernic RG34XX SP just because he's obviously an identical twin to this little guy. But at the same time, I am forced to make this video by comparing... Wait a second. There we go. These two side by side. Before I continue though, I just want to say that both the Anbernic RG34XX SP and this particular Miyoo Flip was provided to me by the awesome guys at LitNXT. I assume you know about LitNXT by now. LitNXT is quite an awesome store. It provided your favorite Vlad Nerd here with a ton of handhelds to review for you fine people, but as always, I just want to let you know that this video isn't sponsored in any way, no money exchanged hands, nobody saw this video beforehand. All of my words here, as well as my criticism, are my own, and this will always be the case. Now, before I go on and basically compare these two, I want to talk about the Anbernic RG34XX SP a bit, because the video is about this handheld at the end of the day. I'm gonna try to make this as short as possible for you so you understand. Both of these handhelds, they have quite similar but at the same time different specifications. They both have 1 GB of RAM. They both have ROMs that are saved on the micro SD cards here. They have volume buttons in the same place, power buttons in the same place, the second SD card slot in the same place, shoulder and trigger buttons in the same place, digital both, and of course micro HD and a USB port for external controllers and so on and so forth. Externally, these two are a one-by-one comparison. However, the similarities do not stop here. They can also play kind of the same thing. As you might see, my dear nerds, I'm focusing kind of on Game Boy Advance over here, and this is for a good reason. You might have noticed that the main difference between these two kind of beautiful flippy boys is the screen, namely that the Anbernic RG34XX SP has a huge forehead, while the Miyoo Flip keeps it way classier with a 4x3 bigger display. And this difference is most prevalent in the fact that we have a perfectly integer scaled image on the 34XX which looks quite gorgeous, especially in real life. I'm pretty sure my camera doesn't give it justice. But at the same time, we can have an almost identical result with the Miyoo Flip by having a small overlay at the bottom, which is actually quite reminiscent of how the GBA used to have its own little Game Boy Advance logo at the bottom as well. My main argument between these two is that it's not like Anbernic wanted to win a prize in originality. I mean, just look at these freaking things. If you were to see them, you'd think that they are slightly different variations, slightly different models from the same company. It's not like they wanted to be unique. They didn't. So why the heck didn't they copy the 4x3 screen as well? In fact, to be fair, as far as I know, the 3x2 screen over here does live in a 4x3 3.5 inch screen housing. It's just that the screen itself is actually 3x2. So technically, because Anbernic also uses the same format screen like how we have here in a lot of their handhelds, there was nothing stopping them in terms of supply for them to put just a bit more screen real estate here. And because of this, with the Anbernic RG34XX SP, you're more or less tied and stuck to GBA. A lot of people will love the fact that this screen perfectly integer scales to GBA. Don't get me wrong, I'm not necessarily trying to bash the screen, but I've said it once and I've said it again. These companies need to give us as much screen real estate as they can possibly offer us, and the community, me, you, and everybody else will make use of that screen. There's custom firmwares that will be pre-configured. You wouldn't have to do anything but enjoy, and for maximum enjoyment, I think we would need bigger screens. But alas, this is a personal preference, bias check. This is just me thinking what works best for me. You might think a bit differently. The RG34XX SP is inevitably condemned around GBA, and that's it, because of the sole reason. But I've said it once, and I've said it 1,000 times, my dear nerds, these shouldn't be mistaken with actual handhelds. What I'm holding in my hand right now might look like a handheld, might press like a handheld, but don't be fooled. This is not a handheld. This is an emulation device, and as such, as an emulation device, it needs to be a Swiss Army knife. It's a bad mistake, in my opinion, to specialize an emulation device along one single console or platform. You need to have this be as best as it can for as many emulation generations of consoles and handhelds as possible. That's why I loved the Miyoo Mini, and that's why I still love it. The 4x3 screen, for better or for worse, is perfect for a lot of generations of consoles. Look at these two side by side. Are you willing to tell me that you wouldn't enjoy GBA on this one as well? Just look at how beautiful it looks, and things like NES inevitably look better on the 4x3 screen than a 3x2. Just look at this difference. Do you see my point over here? Of course, you could make use of more screen real estate here by going into RetroArch and disabling this overlay and then using stretch to fit. If you want to use the whole height of the screen, it would look something like this. The image is considerably smaller on the RG34XX SP because of the aspect ratio. Now, of course, like I said a bit earlier, we can stretch to fit the image, and this is the option that I would personally go for if I were to choose the RG34XX SP as my only handheld. However, just a second, we need to also turn off the overlay. However, my dear nerd, look, now we have a somewhat better image, right? We can shoot, we can blah blah blah, we can enjoy, but the image, as many people in the community would tell you, is now distorted. Whereas here, it's actually on the proper aspect ratio, it's as it should be, my dear nerds. You play it in a more natural way on a 4x3 screen than on a 3x2 screen. In fact, if we put the images side by side, you might notice a few differences, like more blurriness, less pixelation, aka less detail. You might see that here uh, the sprites are a bit stretched. Differences like these. Now, you might be in one of two camps. You might not care about it, or you might think like I do in terms of I need to have the best variables on a handheld, on a Swiss Army knife of emulation, as possible to emulate as many things in as ideal way as I can. So if you prioritize GBA, yeah, get the Anbernic RG34XX SP. Quality-wise, it's better than the Miyoo Flip in any way I can think of. The hinge feels better. The buttons, they just feel better on the Anbernic. Everything feels higher quality, including the freaking plastic on this thing. However, the Miyoo Flip has the proper screen, and it's just sad to me that the Anbernic screen has the same 4x3 screen housing, but it has a 3x2. Now, I can't leave it like this. I can't leave the video in a pool of negativity. I also need to offer a solution in case somebody at Anbernic watches this. First of all, Anbernic, start sending me handhelds again. I don't know why you stopped. Second of all, in this particular case, what should have been done is you should have found a display panel that's 3x2, which would also be in a 3x2 housing to eliminate this forehead over here. And if you wouldn't have had space for the sticks, you could have eliminated them. But by association, you would have created a way more pocketable flippy boy that the community would have loved. Not everyone loves sticks. I happen to love sticks, but I love a very big screen to body ratio most of all, and I think a lot of people would have loved a way smaller forehead, and by extension a way smaller device by, let's say, this big. So I understand that these companies, they are like, we are lucky to have them. First of all, we are lucky to have Anbernic and Miyoo and everyone, because we tend to forget, as spoiled consumers, which we are, by the way, we tend to forget that these companies, they are no Samsung, they are no Apple, Asus, whatever. They are literally a smallish companies that serve a niche, a fairly small niche. We think that the retro emulation niche has expanded drastically. Maybe it did, but it went from 3 grains of sand to 8 grains of sand. It's still very small in comparison to other things. So, coming back to handhelds, I need to leave you with a TLDR when it comes to what you should get. Well, my dear nerd, it's very simple. If you prioritize GBA, then the Anbernic RG34XX SP should be a no-brainer for you. It's just way better feeling and way higher quality than this little guy right here. However, if you're like me and you prioritize as ideal of a emulation experience as you can possibly get, then you're aiming for a general all-rounded good handheld. And for that, you really cannot compromise on a 4x3 screen. That's kind of the thing. That's why I love the Miyoo Mini. It serves its perfect role as a Swiss Army knife of emulation. You have sticks that get out of the way when you don't need them. They are still here though when you do need them. The sticks, they kind of make no sense on a device that's optimized for one single handheld, the GBA with its 3x2 screen. So, coming back, get this if you want to emulate GBA and that's it. However, I would personally despite all its flaws, the Miyoo Flip, it's not perfect. The gray one had hinge problems. The other ones, well, I can feel that the plastic isn't as high quality as what Anbernic is offering. But all around, it's just a way better experience. For me, it's not a competition. Now, if Anbernic had put the 4x3 screen on the RG34XX SP, then this would have kicked the little butt of the Miyoo Flip. However, this didn't happen. It was gimped, in my own humble opinion, by this screen. So, I'm gonna leave in my video description links to both to the Anbernic RG34XX SP and to the Miyoo Flip, which has a lot of fingerprints on it. Like, holy heck, it's like I'm radiating olive oil, I swear. But anyway, I'm gonna leave links to both. I can't tell you which one to get. It depends on which one you're gonna prioritize as a human. What do you want to play? Do you want the perfect GBA experience? Then go for this. If not, go for this. I am a Miyoo Flip guy. I am not ashamed to say it. I wished this would have been a Miyoo Flip killer. All it had to do was to have a 4x3 screen. That's it. That's it, Anbernic. You know, it's very frustrating sometimes because I knew you could have made this perfect. I know you could have. Alas, it is what it is. Like I said, they both kind of emulate the same thing. They have different SoCs, but honestly, that doesn't matter. What matters is that you have a very similar performance in both of them, very similar battery life. In fact, I want to put this here as perspective. Technically, the Anbernic has 10% more battery life, 3300 milliamp, versus Miyoo's 3000 milliamp, but I didn't feel the difference. This is yet another thing of use case versus specs. I didn't feel the difference between the two. Before I made this video, I did the very lengthy test of draining both of these from 100% to 0% with actual use. I played so much NES and so much GBA. Out of both of them, I didn't feel like one lasted more than the other. So, this is what I wanted to tell you. In my own humble opinion, my dear nerds, get the Miyoo Flip. It's gonna be in the video description. If you are really into GBA, then, no, I keep talking about GBA, but I have an NES game here. If you are really into GBA, then get the Anbernic RG34XX SP. You really cannot go wrong with any of them. What matters is your priority. What do you prioritize most of all? Let me know what you think. I know I jumped over a lot of things. You know, I could have told you about the fact that the RG34XX SP has an audio jack as well, which it does. I could have told you that it has a reset button here, but these are kind of irrelevant. I think you come to this video to hear about the experience and about which one is better than the other. You probably want to buy, I'm guessing, tell me if I'm wrong, you're probably looking at these two and you don't know which one to get. And this is what I wanted to answer. Because I wouldn't want you to ping pong between them. I want you to be happy with whichever of these two you want to go for. This one, in my opinion. And I'm not just saying this because Anbernic didn't send me devices anymore. Anbernic, send me devices. Let's be friends, Anbernic. Alas, I really wanted to give you as objective as possible conclusion to this video. For that, I need to think overall which device would best serve your needs. And I think the Miyoo Flip simply wins. Again, link in my description if you want. And just to put a tiny segue for myself here, I also have a Discord in case you're still around and you want us to chat. I have a mini community there, 300 something people. They are all awesome nerds. We all help each other. We all keep each other up to date in this tiny, tiny passion hobby of ours. I want you there. Come there. You need to be part of my community. Come there. I love you very much. And last but not least, we'll see each other in the next video. Bye, my nerd.